Greetings from Castle Goring, from Aurora and from me. Well, as usual, there's much ado about nothing. I have to say, little did we know when Harry married Meghan that she was going to be curating, orchestrating, directing, producing, and starring in the ersatz pseudo-royal version of the Truman Show. And of course, people want answers to what's going on. Because even though they know that whatever is going on is engineered and chaotic and, quite frankly, 9 times out of 10, stupid or self-defeating, still, what the heck is going on? Because none of it should be happening. So, whenever things don't add up, whenever things happen that shouldn't happen, people want to know why, and they want things to be put into their proper place. Well, Lilspeth says, "Dear Lady C, I have known those who did not cope with sudden fame. In many ways, I wonder if, while climbing the social strata, it simply went to her head. All the step-by-step maneuvers paid off. Fame and money, both delivering power, can destroy a person." And incidentally, to those of you who want to know, this is Dora. She is my granddaughter. So, she is my son's dog. And she has come to join us. So we are going to just incorporate her and rock and roll with Dora. Usually, any major adjustment in life requires time to actually adjust properly. You know, when you get married, you cease being a single woman and you become a wife. That is an adjustment. I mean, I don't need to be so platitudinous and perfunctory to describe, but everything requires adjustment. Sudden fame is something that evidently requires massive adjustment. Now, I wouldn't know. I never was suddenly famous. I was born into a very well-known family. I married into another one. From the time I was 18, got a lot of attention because of the way I looked. So I had to adjust to all of that. I mean, I had to adjust to being regarded as good looking. And that was an adjustment. And an adjustment, incidentally, not without its downside as well as its upside. But we're not going to go into that because we're not speaking about me. I'm just simply making the point that in life, everything requires adjustment. I'm sure every married woman understood once she got married that she had to make the adjustment from being a single woman to a married woman. And then motherhood requires, everything in life requires adjustment. Of course, if it's very sudden, it requires more, there's more of a jolt. And if you have sudden fame, yes, it does require a bigger adjustment. Now, Meghan had 2 gears to her fame. The first one was when she became a minor cast member of Suits and thereafter presented herself as a star of Suits and the love interest in Suits. And she bigged up her little role for all it was worth. And she bigged up herself. There are tales of Meghan when she was a cast member of Suits, booking into hotels under a nom de plume, or maybe we should say nom de guerre, because she couldn't have the public knowing that she, the great Meghan Markle, who nobody had ever heard of, was there. So she was trying in that first gear of fame to big herself up more because she wasn't satisfied with the level of fame. And that doesn't mean, though, that she didn't flog it for all it was worth. There are stories circulating of Meghan abusing hotel staff when she is on freebies because she does not think that her goodie bags are good enough. So she's on a freebie, she's been given free things, and she's having the unmitigated gall to complain about the goodie bags. And I know, because I know people in Canada who are friends of my children, who knew what was going on in that whole set with Suits, that Meghan was thoroughly disliked and unpopular because she was always trying to big herself up and make herself out to be a bigger star. And indeed, in my book, Meghan and Harry, The Real Story, I point out how her constant flaunting of her minor celebrity became a huge problem in her relationship with Corey Vitiello, because people just don't behave like that. But she did. Well, it worked to the extent that she ended up getting Harry. What ceased to work was, having got Harry, she then jettisoned all of the life lessons that she had been shrewd enough to take on board as she horizontally and vertically worked her way up that slippery ladder to a form of celebrity. When she became a major celebrity as a result of her engagement to Harry and then became royal, she did what most people with personality disorders do at some point. They jettison positivity for the raw exercise of power. There are indications that she had the tendency from before. For instance, the incident at the opening of Soho House, where she's busy complaining about the fact that her goodie bag isn't good enough for her. I mean, the unmitigated gall, the crassness of it all, but the egotism of it all, the self-delusionalism of it all. But it's when she linked up with Harry and then realized that she was really going to marry Harry, and that she really kicked in with her tremendous abuse of people and abuse of power. Sudden fame and sudden wealth can and often do destroy people who are not used to them and who do not have a character that can accommodate the advantages and the benefits as well as the downside of sudden wealth and fame. Meghan's failings as an egotistical monster are what destroyed her. But she always was egotistical, and it was always a matter of being given the opportunity to be a monster for the monstrosity that she was to come to the fore. I am in touch with people who knew Meghan when she was a teenager, when she was in grade 10, grade 12, and they are extremely interesting about what a nasty piece of work she was even then. So that was always there. It was just a matter of when the trigger was going to be pulled, and then the bullets were going to come shooting out, a rat-a-tat. And they have since then. And evidently, Meghan is seriously perplexed and cannot understand why everything she tries fails. She cannot grasp that people see through her and see her for the monstrosity that she is. Because as far as she's concerned, these are her entitlements. These are her just rewards for all that she did to get where she's got to. Fascinating how these sort of things work. But she's not the only person. Loads of other successes, overnight successes in quote unquote. People who have moved up a gear or three suddenly. The world is full of examples. Marilyn Monroe was one. I mean, the world of Hollywood is full of people who came from nowhere, ended up as something somewhere, and in the process, they were destroyed. Because their destruction was a part of their character. Sad but true. Now, in Marilyn Monroe's case, it was a bit special because she did have an extremely disadvantaged background. But it doesn't alter the fact that it happened to her. And it's happened with Meghan. She really has imploded, but it also happened with Diana. Diana changed personality between her engagement and her wedding, and then imploded and only really began to reincorporate her original personality in the last few years of her life, after she was separated and she went into therapy. So it happens. Miss Fish and Chips says, well, I guess me gain might as well milk it for all it's worth. Likely won't have much to write home about when Prince William is king. Evidently, she thinks she's going to be able to brazen it out. Harry knows differently, but she thinks she's going to be able to brazen it out. Let's wait and see what happens, because, they say a week is a long time in politics. William might be several years off the throne. So let's see what happens. But she's certainly milking it for all it's worth. And nothing is working. I mean, she and Harry are in deep trouble, and they know it. They are seriously worried about the finances. They are worried about their ability to fund and maintain their way of life. They are worried about their ever decreasing popularity, they are worried about, well, she's worried about the fact that the Juliet part of Romeo and Juliet is no longer so convincing. And he's not been playing ball the way she would like. Well, maybe he's playing ball elsewhere. Nothing wrong with that, as long as it's all done in philosophical terms and nothing else. Lisa Jean says, Lacey, so is it true that Harry plans to tour Eton, where he didn't have the best of times, to make sure it's safe for George? Serious question from this Canadian who very much appreciates your brave spirit and this channel. Thank you very much for that. Harry's full of it, absolutely full of it. Do you remember when he said that he had come to check on the Queen to see that she was surrounded by the right people? As if he had any say whatsoever in who surrounded the Queen. Do you remember that? I mean, just making a total ass of himself. And he's been doing it again. He's going to tour Eton to make sure that George is going to be well taken care of. First of all, Eton understands that Harry was something of a disgrace to them, caused them no end of trouble, including legally. Secondly, they understand that if they have Prince George there, there's no way they should have Archie as well. Thirdly, everybody at Eton and everybody associated with Eton and everybody who is beyond the outer periphery of the Eton circle knows only too well that Harry has absolutely no say whatsoever to do with anything with William and or his children. So the idea that Harry is planting stories to big himself up, saying that he is going to be the guardian of his nephew's interests. He doesn't even know his nephew any longer. There's no interaction whatsoever between the families. None. And there is going to be none either as long as the status quo remains intact. That is as long as Meghan is in the picture and Harry continues, Doria, superb weed. Everybody knows what they're dealing with. You know, Catherine is the head of a charity. I think it's now called Action on Addiction. I had to raise money for it. I organised, in part, the Maypole Ball in 1991 for it. It was called something else then. But she's now the head of that. So she knows all about addiction. She also knows all about mental ill health. She's made it a subject of interest for her. The idea that Harry, who is a total mess and drug-addled, would anybody would give him the time of day. And I'm pretty damn sure that nobody at Eton would be giving him a tour of the place for him to pontificate about what his viewpoint is with his nephew George being there, because everybody knows that would get William and Catherine's back up. And so none of it is going to happen. This is yet another fantasy story coming out of Montecito. On a daily basis, they just come up with, really, manure. It's absolute manure on a daily basis. I hope that answers the question. Lily Cook says, "Hi, Lady C. Hi, Lily Cook. The situation of that grifter in Cambridge University reminds me of Misson Hairylegs' appointment at the Southbank Centre. Would love to know if you can find out who gave him that position and why. Just because he goes around and photographs, always in black and white, of course, for more impact. All these radical scenes in the US and elsewhere. A person like that in those jobs would in turn only look after black people, and opportunities for white people would definitely diminish. What do you think?" Well, I think it is extraordinary, and now I speak as somebody who was a very, very active member of the musical world for many years. My brother was an absolute expert on classical music. Shura Tchaikovsky used to say, "Oh, don't bother me about music. Speak to Michael. He knows much more about music than I do." Shura Tchaikovsky, to those of you who don't know, was one of the world's great pianists. I used to practically live at the Southbank. Not for many years, but I certainly, when I was younger, practically lived at the Southbank. And I was intimately acquainted with its running. Also, to those of you who don't know, my cousin Sir Peter Jonas was the head of the English National Opera. So there wasn't only the Southbank, there was also the Coliseum. So I'm very aware of the classical music scene. And I have to tell you, there has never been any colour prejudice in the classical music scene, ever. Nobody cared about whether a singer was black or white or a pianist, whatever. Nobody cared. All they cared about was talent. Nothing else counted. Grace Bunbury, an absolutely fabulous career, and nobody cared about the colour of her skin. Absolutely nobody. Willard White, black Jamaican. Nobody ever cared about the colour of his skin. Nobody. The idea that black performers need to be pushed because they're black is ludicrous. When I was young, the only thing that counted was talent. You were as good as you were, and you had as good a career as you did, irrespective of your colour, class, background, ambitions, whatever. I used to know a pianist called Craig Shepherd. Craig Shepherd was a very fine pianist, but I used to know Craig Shepherd, who was the runner-up in the 1972 Leeds International Piano Competition that Murray Pariah won. And Craig's nose was always out of joint that he did not win. and that Murray Pariah did. And he made some very poor judgment calls because he did not win the piano competition. Was he as good a pianist as Murray Pariah? Well, he certainly was a very fine pianist, but Murray Pariah ended up having a bigger and a better career. Both of them were white, incidentally. The idea that music was ever judged by anything but musical talent is ludicrous. Nobody cared who you were, what your family was. It made absolutely no difference. The fact that Misson Harriman, who is a fourth-rate talent at everything except playing the colour card and being the son of a very rich Nigerian, and is heading up the Southbank, is to me a matter of great perplexity, because you shouldn't be having anybody who is going to be so aggressively DEI. I mean, excuse me, the colour of your skin has absolutely nothing to do with talent. And nor indeed do your beliefs, because Richard Wagner was a rabid anti-Semite. And when the State of Israel tried to ban his music, Daniel Barenboim, the great Israeli composer, the great conductor and pianist who was married to one of the great luminaries, cellists of all time. He said, absolutely not. We are not banning Richard Wagner's music. And he's Jewish, by the way, in case you didn't twig. He said, we're not banning Richard Wagner's music. It doesn't matter what his political beliefs were. The only thing that counts is the music. And the only thing that has ever counted in music has been the talent. The music and the ability to play it if you are a performer. Why is Misson Harriman appointed to the position? Because we are now a perverted society that is ridden with all sorts of awarenesses that are counterproductive to quality and really, ultimately, to the smooth functioning of a society positively. It doesn't matter what the colour of your skin is. If you're not good enough, you're not good enough. It's as simple as that. And anybody who thinks differently clearly cannot like music. Stevens says, fight to keep your NHS. Don't give up on it. You will regret going to insurance companies like the USA. Just fight for what you have. I agree that we need a national health service. I agree that we need a national health service that functions properly, however. This one doesn't. And we need to recalibrate our national health service. And as it stands, it is, as I'm going to point out to you in the following comments, it is nothing but a pathway to death for many people. I'm afraid it should not be called the National Health Service when sometimes it's seems to be the National Executioner's Service. And I'm going to read out one or two comments which are very opposite in terms of what has been going on. Linda Whitaker says, my late husband was in St. Thomas's Hospital. I was in St. Thomas's Hospital. When he was discharged, his daughter noticed that his discharge papers included a DNR, do not resuscitate order. The hospital did not ask us if we wanted that. His daughter phoned and asked why that was on his discharge papers. They said, given his age and illness, it would be impossible to do resuscitation, and they did not have to consult the family on this matter. We were shocked at this. I'm not surprised that you were shocked. It is contrary to everything that the Hippocratic Oath is meant to represent. Sadly, it is very symptomatic of what is happening in the National Health Service nowadays. Mary, sorry, oh, the little puppy's right by me and her fur has managed to float up. Mary Fear says, in other words, the hospital you mention has a mandate to let an elderly man or woman die without the knowledge of the man or woman themselves or their loved ones. This is manslaughter, second-degree murder, that uninformed tax-paying citizens are paying for with the approval of the city mayor, the MPs, and the Prime Minister and the King. Okay, got it. Thank you for your valuable input and warning here. Thank God your husband got out of that hospital and lived a while longer. Blessings to you and your family. Remember, God sees everything, knows what every single man or woman does, and each of us will stand before God on our individual judgment day. From Toronto. Well, be that as it may, the fact that God sees everything doesn't absolve us of responsibility to stand up for what we know to be right and what is incumbent upon us to ensure is implemented. And in terms of what is going on in this country at the moment, in terms of refusing to resuscitate people in certain circumstances, and in others creating the medical situation where they will be shoved into palliative care, unwittingly, unwillingly, and usually without their knowledge or the knowledge of their family. I don't know whether that qualifies as manslaughter or whatever it qualifies as. I know it's wrong. I know it's immoral. I know it's amoral. And I know it should be unlawful. But it is the practice in hospitals up and down this country at the moment. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. We are doing to certain segments of our population worse than Hitler did to his, because Hitler definitely set about medically eradicating the infirm, the handicapped, and people who he did not approve of. We are doing it rather across the board in terms of age and in terms of, oh, well, we don't think that their lives warrant being saved. And so we're going to not only not save their lives, we are going to, if we can, speed up the process of their death. It is an absolute outrage. Elderly Marion in UK says, I'm 74. I was recently in Glangwili NHS hospital in Carmarthen, that's in Wales. I had a broken shoulder from falling over. I'm mentally sharp and on the ball like you are, Lady C. And I was horrified at the treatment the elderly received. Old people were left suffering without any attention. They were left in their own urine and feces, with no food or drinks, and just given drugs to shut them up. I discharged myself after 3 weeks and phoned Bupa to continue my treatment privately. It's common knowledge between the aware oldies that the NHS have a policy not to help people over 70. Even the GPs don't want to know. That's if one can get past the Gestapo triage on the phone. I've not seen an NHS GP for 4 years since turning 70. At best, I've been palmed off onto the nurses. I have to see private GPs if I want any positive action. God help us. Anyway, I'm glad to see you looking so well, Lady C. God bless you and yours. Take care. And I hype when I can. I'm only allowed 3 hypes a week, and they quickly get used up with so many good channels on here. So, well, what can I tell you? I have been waiting over a year for my local NHS GP to refer me to an osteoporosis specialist so that they can start to give me treatment for my osteoporosis that they have singularly failed to do for 10 years. I have reached the stage where I am most likely going to go privately, get the drug, pay for the drug, and then sue the NHS for the money, because I don't see why I should be paying taxes and I should be deprived of what I am entitled to. So, but again, all they need to do, they know what the treatment is that's required. All they need to do is refer me to a consultant specialist who will prescribe a particular drug. I've actually gone privately and got my private doctor, osteoporosis specialist, to write them, telling them what treatment is required. They haven't done a thing about it. Now, you would imagine that one of the most serious things is somebody's bones, and therefore they would want to do it quickly. But no, the inefficiency is at best beyond negligence. If you cannot afford decent medical treatment, you're not getting it in this country, by and large. Very occasionally, the NHS is good with certain things. They were certainly good when my brother was dying. They were wonderful. But that was over 30 years ago. They have degenerated in the worst way possible. What can I tell you? We live in really very distressing times where funds are diverted to incorporate people into this country who have no right to be here, who've usually paid a lot of money to get here, who are then rewarded for their illegal entry, while taxpayers who have an absolute right to be given medical treatment are deprived of it. Unbelievable. Mary MacDonald says, Lady C, thanks for calling out the universities, lowering standards, and the slippery dumbing down of too many with DEI. A few days ago, I read the University of Michigan is eliminating grades for the freshman first semester. How do you start eliminating the students who aren't capable or lack motivation to learn without assigning grades? The fact of the matter is, people don't seem to understand the human being, and they don't seem to understand human nature. And they have no respect for the biological realities of human nature. One of which is growth is painful, pain is necessary. Pain also tells you what you should avoid. However, pain is necessary for growth. Any university that thinks that it should lower standards to such an extent that students shouldn't be graded. Why? Because the students' feelings are going to be hurt? Hurt feelings are not only a necessary part of life, they are sometimes a desirable part of life. Nowadays, learning lessons is avoided at all costs because you can't traumatize people. Excuse me, how the heck do you think they're going to learn if they are not going to learn a lesson? And it needs to be at times painful enough for them to learn from it. The reality is we are a very decadent civilization in a very state of flux at the moment, where many of society's values have been devalued and they have been replaced with fallacies that are going to turn out to be obviously self-destructive. I mean, you only need to look at London and see how the city has degenerated since Sadiq Khan took over. Overregulation on the one hand, and on the other hand, criminals being allowed to perform criminally. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So you have traffic regulated to a stranglehold, but then criminals are not regulated, so they are allowed to run free. It's not only the universities that have problems, it's society generally. And we will have to watch and wait and see what the outcome is going to be. because we are in a state of great flux at the moment. We are in an age where a lot of what mankind has previously done is going to be handed over to machines and machinery. Man is going to be free to be a leisured being to a large extent. I shudder to think at the bad artwork that's going to flourish. Let's put it that way. But people are going to have, by and large, to a large extent, leisure time that needs to be filled. It's going to be a brave new world. And it's going to be a new world that, if they continue down the path of overregulation, it's going to be a world not worth living in. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time and attention. Please let me know in the comments section what ground you would like us to be covering. And if you have enjoyed this, could you please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and hype if you can? Thank you so much. Godspeed and goodbye.